this? What's in these files?
Well, this is extremely exciting news here in the UK. It's a massive story. What we've seen is the first step in a 3 to 4 year programme to release the government's entire archive of UFO files. Now, some of the material in there, and we've got just in this first batch about 2,000 pages of documentation. Some of it's quite mundane, but in amongst those reports, we've got some absolutely fascinating cases. A lot of UFOs seen by police officers. We've got some cases where pilots have seen UFO, and we've got a really amazing case where a UFO was tracked on military radar, travelling 10 nautical miles in 12 seconds.
Bob, why did the government release these files? The French government, I know, they released some documents last year, and governments have always kept it secret, the United States included. Why now, do you think, Bob?
I don't really know. Perhaps from a cynical point of view, it's a good PR exercise. It's the ministry's opportunity of showing the world that, hey, we've got nothing to hide. Here's all our files on UFOs. The motives, the reason could be anything, to be honest. Why now? I really don't know.
Peter Davenport, will this tend to put naysayers away?
It's hard to say. It's still hearsay evidence, but I find it interesting that the release follows hot on the heels of the statement by the Vatican just yesterday, I think it was, stating that they felt it was okay to believe in aliens and UFOs and life elsewhere in our galaxy. This is an interesting 1-2 punch.
Lieutenant Chuck Holt, the only one of our panel, I guess, who's seen one. What do you make of it?
I find it quite puzzling. Why is this being spread over 4 years? It doesn't really make sense to me, unless the volume is so great it takes that long to preview it.
Yeah, what do you think, Nick? Why 4 years?
Well, yes, that's the point. Under the Freedom of Information Act, and by the way, that's one of the reasons why the Ministry of Defence have decided to release this. The MOD get more FOI requests on UFOs than any other subject, so the administrative burden of dealing with that has been so big that the government decided it's better to just take all the files and put them in the National Archives so that in future people can be referred there. But of course there are all sorts of exemptions under the Freedom of Information Act. Personal information of witnesses, classified information such as, for example, the capabilities of military radar systems, and some poor desk officer has to go through all this material, and there are tens of thousands of pages of this. I mean, it's an absolutely massive job. So we're going to get maybe half a dozen files every month for the next 3 or 4 years. I know it's taking a long time, but of course, as you would expect in the Ministry of Defence at the moment, there are all sorts of competing priorities.
Bob Rosamond, has the UFO research, the British UFO Research Association, had many reports over the years about sightings?
We have a substantial archive, actually. We have somewhere in the region of 12 to 15,000 case files going back as far as 1925. So it's quite a substantial amount of documentation, quite possibly
Peter,
more than the ministry itself has.
Peter, why has this been in the United States and prior to this in Great Britain some dark secret? Why won't the United States release anything it knows?
Yeah, a lot of people conjecture on that, Larry, and none of us, even serious-minded UFO investigators, knows the answer to that question. But it is an intriguing question. Of course, Belgium and Chile and France and now England, to a degree the Soviet Union, and now Russia have all, to one degree or another, opened their files on this subject. I would look to the United States government now to do the same, and what I would like to see is somebody senior in the U.S. government, in the military and intelligence communities, say to its people, if you know anything about the UFO phenomenon, you are free to talk to the press and to the American public. Yeah. That would solve the problem in a hurry.
How were you treated by the powers that be after this report was filed?
Well, I was treated with respect, but everybody kept me at arm's length. Nobody wanted to get too close or too deeply involved.
Why?
Well, let's face it, there's a stigma that comes with this. Very few people are willing to speak out and tell the truth. It's just too awkward. You're criticized.
Do you think the British government's actions might lead to some by the United States?
I would certainly hope so, but the situation here is a little different. Keep in mind there are at least a half a dozen or more intelligence agencies that have their own, how shall I say, files, programs, whatever. They share when convenient, they trade when convenient, and they withhold from each other.
Do you look in the sky a lot?
Do I look in the sky a lot?
Yeah,
No.
now. Are you?
No. And I don't belong to any organization or any magazine or whatever.
But you are convinced you saw something that wasn't an airplane.
I definitely saw something that can't be explained.
Nick Pope,
Excuse me.
Nick Pope, give me an example of a report you've seen in Great Britain.
Well, we had, this is a report that's been in the public domain for a while, but just to show the sorts of spectacular cases that we do get, we had a sighting from a commercial airline pilot who saw 2 UFOs, estimated as being almost a mile long, and this thing was actually tracked on radar. There was a primary radar return. Then a few years before that, we had a case with a UFO flying over 2 military bases in England, seen by numerous police and military witnesses. One of the Air Force officers described this thing as a vast triangular-shaped craft moving from a virtual hover to a speed several times that of a fast jet, just in seconds. And this is an Air Force officer with 8 years experience talking to me.
We have a question from a caller in Mobile, Alabama. Hello.
Hi, Larry. I was wondering if there is any data in the files relating to alien life forms, or is it all the data strictly regarding unidentified flying objects?
Good question. Bob Russelman, in your files, do you have anything relating to alien forms?
In our files, yes. Bufora have a vast number of files with reports of encounters of alleged alien beings, entities, and alleged abduction experiences.
You believe them?
Pardon?
Do you believe them?
Bufora are a strictly objective organisation. It's not about belief. It's where the facts and the evidence takes you.
Peter, do you think the events in Great Britain will open up things in other places?
It's an encouraging sign, Larry. It may suggest that there's a movement afoot to mete out information piecemeal, maybe to prepare us for something that the government knows and would like to have us know more about. But that's pure conjecture. We ufologists have been saying the same thing for now well nigh on 61 years, that it's just around the corner. So it's an encouraging note, I would say. But I'll wait to see if the U.S. government responds to this at all. Be interesting to see what the Vatican has to say about it, too.
Do you think their reasons would be national security?
It's hard to know. That's what everybody gravitates to. Everybody says, well, the government is not feeding this information to the American public because they're afraid we'd panic. That doesn't make an ounce of sense to me, frankly. I don't think we would panic. If you look at cartoons every Saturday morning, to my eye, about 90% of them have to do with alien life and spaceships and so on and so forth. Yeah. There may be some other reason they're doing that.